Good evening, friend, and welcome to a look at what people really ate at medieval feasts, from bread trenchers and stews to fish on days of fasting and spice that bragged, all shaped by rank, rules, trade, and the work in the kitchens. One fancy dish was basically a prop, and guests barely ate it. If you enjoy these sleepy history tours and want more deep dives, consider liking and subscribing so the next story finds you. Where are you listening from? And what time is it right now in your corner of the night? Unclench your jaw, dim the lights, and let the slow hum of your bedside fan settle the room. And know this story is a banquet laid out like a chessboard, and feasts in the Middle Ages were not a buffet fantasy, but theater with cues, with bread at the center, days of fasting steering menus, spice signaling rank, and leftovers put to work. Now, let's step toward the hall where the benches are being set. An open oak door frames the great hall, and you pause at the threshold. Servants slide past with basins and pitchers, sleeves rolled, voices low, platters clink, and the rushes whisper under quick feet. The hearth pops against the far wall, light skating over shields and dark beams. A raised dais holds the high table, set lengthwise so all eyes land there. Broad boards rest on trestles, tall and straight. Knives sit at ready, cups wait in pairs, and neat stacks of trenchers stand by. These are thick slabs of yesterday's bread, cut to be plates. At the center, the faint shine of a brass candlestick by the high table catches your eye. A steward waits near the door with a narrow roll of names. He checks the list, counts seats, and sizes people with one glance. He moves pegs on a small board to track courses and wine. A herald warms his voice a few steps away. He tests titles, shapes syllables, and practices the highest names until they flow. Fat candles give a steady light, and the wax throws a soft, sweet smell. Cold air trails in through the open door and brushes your wrists. From the yard comes a short clatter. Then the room stills and the draft fades. Benches line the long tables that run below the dais, each with a set space. Officers watch the corners where ewers wait for hand washing. Pages hover by the screen's passage, ready to carry messages to the kitchens. The layout speaks first. It tells you who matters before a word is said. This feast is staged politics dressed as dinner. The hall is a stage, and every seat is a line. Every move here signals something. Rank climbs with each step toward the high table. Sitting near the host means access, and access means favors. The big salt will sit within reach of the best seats, and people will read their place by its gleam. The steward handles the math of honor, so the host does not have to. He places kin by kin, allies by allies, and visiting strangers where they will be flattered and watched. The herald provides the sound to match the sight. When he names a guest, the room will know who is who. Even the soup knows its place. Your eyes drift back to the benches and the empty stretch left between clusters of chairs. That little gap is not an accident. It keeps peace between rival households and gives the carvers and cupbearers clean lanes. It also frames the view, so the high table feels higher and the lower tables feel many. Seating will set the tone for the night. Watch the pull of the high table, the cluster near the salt, and the patient weight of those below it. You can read a whole ledger of favors by where a person lands. Take a breath and step onto the rushes as the steward waves you in. You move across fresh rushes toward the long trestles. The floor hushes under your steps. beeswax hangs in the air. Polished wood gives a lemony smell. Benches line the boards in neat rows, waiting. Servants pass with quick eyes and steady hands. The tables are loose boards on trestles, meant to rise for feast and vanish for bed. At the far end, the high table sits raised on a low platform. The host and the most honored sit there. In its center rests a big silver salt cellar, squat and bright. Torchlight flickers across the salt, a small sun on the board. Below it stretch long tables for everyone else. Benches pack them tight. A steward in sober cloth checks a list and points people to their places. An usher backs him. A herald watches the door for late nobles and messengers. Because the seat near the salt signals rank, therefore every placement broadcasts status. Put the wrong baron below the salt and you may offend a house for a year. Hosts remember slights and guests tally favors. Every inch of bench can carry a story. Ushers guide you between boards, left hand to the wall if you rank high, right if you do not. Like VIP rows at a concert. No place cards, just politics. Bench legs scrape on the floor as people shift. Names carry weight, and the steward says them just loud enough. A boy sets a clean trencher before you and keeps moving. The steward glances once more at the salt, then at you, and nods. Service follows the seats. Dishes reach the high table first, then travel down the line. Bread trenchers act as plates and as plan B for hunger. Carvers and cupbearers work in rhythm, knives neat, ladles steady. The salt marks who is served in which order and how much attention hovers. The feast moves like a tide from the dais to the door, and if the flow stalls, someone notices. Stewards fix jams before they turn to talk. You learn the trick of it. A feast is choreography, not chaos. The hall feeds bodies, and it also feeds reputation. Seats, turns, and timing tell a story that even the bread understands. The smooth parts make status look natural, and the rough parts show the fault lines. Behind the screen, servers wait for the pantler and the butler to signal the next wave. To see the pattern, look past the candles to the kitchens behind the screen. Follow the aromas into the passage where the air grows hotter. Iron spits turn before a great hearth, and the kitchen breathes smoke. Cauldrons murmur at the edges. You pass the hearth and feel your cheeks warm. Ash rides the air in fine specks. Hear the soft clank of ladles against cauldrons. This is the engine room of the feast. A stone oven nearby bakes crusts for pies, while the hearth roasts meat. Hooks hold joints high and low to catch hotter or cooler spots. Racks keep ladles and skewers within reach, and a runnel in the floor carries spills away. The master cook stands at the block and sets the pace. He counts portions by table and watches the spits. Scullions rinse greens, scrub heavy pots, and haul water. Turnspit workers keep the iron moving with steady arms and quick eyes. The master cook, scullions, and turnspit crew keep a tight rhythm. A runner darts to the pantry, and a boy skims fat from a pan. A clerk scratches notes on a wax tablet to track what has gone out. Knives get a quick edge on a whetstone, then go right back to work. The master cook checks the larder list and adjusts. Calm voice, quick nod. Signals move in quick bursts here. A lifted knife calls the carver. A shout sets a platter moving. Because dozens of dishes must land hot together, therefore a chain of hands and signals keeps time. Like a packed airport runway schedule. Sauce makers grind bread and almonds and pass a warm jug at the exact moment carved meat hits the board. A runner counts the trenchers for a lower table, then calls back so the next batch does not crowd the door. A pan of pike waits one breath so the fish course and the hot wafers will not argue on the way out. Open flame stays a constant risk. Grease snaps on the coals and sparks leap toward the timbers. Wet cloths and sand sit ready by the wall. Fire screens stand near the front to blunt heat and flicks of ash. Timing stays tight under the heat. If a roast lingers, a pie cools, and timing breaks. If a pot boils over, the floor turns slick. One fire, 0 second chances. Long forks reach into the blaze so hands do not. The big hood draws smoke upward, but not all of it, and the day's air stays a little sharp. A flare, at the wrong moment, can scorch a course and sink a mood. Here, logistics matter more than recipe flair. The plate that shines is the one that arrives hot, cut clean, and on cue. The master cook builds a march of dishes for the hall. He thinks in courses, not single tricks, and he thinks in lanes. The carver needs space at the door, so platters queue in the passage, not the hearth. The saucer stands near the carver, not the fire, so the taste stays balanced. At the table edge, service begins with bread. Trenchers cut from firm loaves go down first to catch juices. After the meal, those soaked trenchers often leave for charity or the servants' table, not the bin. Knives and salt follow, then ewers for hand washing, and the first platters arrive with a small bow. Servers align by rank, so the high table meets no delay, and the lower tables still move. Step back into the hall, where trenchers and knives are waiting. A server slides a thick slab of bread to the edge of your place. Here, trenchers of stale bread or wood stand in as plates. You feel steam rise from a fresh loaf as it's split. You hear a knife glide through crust with a soft crunch. The smell of warm grain hangs low and friendly. A basin arrives with a ewer and clean towel. Hands are washed before fingers touch food. The carver steps up, blade bright and steady. The server tracks the seating, guides the order, and sets the pace so high seats are served first. A faint curl of ale yeast lifts from the jug and nudges your nose. Broth and sauces find the trencher and sink in. Because trenchers soak sauces, therefore they become built-in donation packages, like an edible plate that doubles as a to-go box. Eco-friendly, centuries early. Excellent question. Who eats that soaked bread later is not usually you. When the course ends, staff gather the bread trenchers and sound pieces for servants or the poor. The almoner keeps the tally and directs the baskets to the gate, where hungry hands know to wait. Wooden trenchers are scraped clean for the scullery, washed, and set back into duty, while edible scraps and crusts move out as alms. Trenchers and leftovers are sent on with purpose, not tossed. Bread does more than get food to your mouth. It marks every place, frames portions, and quietly sets the rhythm of serving and clearing. It also builds the gift into the meal itself, so the last bite here begins the first bite somewhere else. The carver and server keep that structure, calling when to lift, when to pass, when to stop. Bread, in short, shapes the meal and the charity that follows. Ahead, the sound changes, and eyes tilt toward the kitchen door, where meat will decide rank in a way bread never does. The carver knows which joint flatters a lord, and which slice suits a squire, and household rules and customs spell out who should receive the choicer cuts. A horn sounds, and the roast appears at the door. A roasted boar's head lifts above the benches on a broad platter, tusks polished, jaw tied. The servers move slow, and the hall claps softly. Crisp fat crackles at the ears. Watch the sheen of glaze catch candlelight. A server steadies the charger with a folded cloth so the trophy makes its full circuit. A herald steps ahead and calls the course, short and sure. In some halls, a cry of largesse answers him. The carver follows with long knives and a towel over his shoulder. Little boats of cameline and green sauce trail the blades. Smell a sweet spice note as the platter passes. Venison sits beside boar as the top prize. It comes from deer that only lords may hunt inside the royal forests. Forest law is a map of privilege, and it was a legal zone, more than a patch of trees. Forest law makes that clear and costly to break, with fines, jail, or worse, for poaching. Because hunting rights restrict venison, therefore elite meat proves power. A steward oversees where the first slices go. The household keeps a chart of who sits where and who eats what. Rank decides the path of each juicy cut. The best marrow and the tender cheek move to the high table, and eyes follow. Like posting a blue check in edible form. Status, but well done. Cameline waits in warm cups. It is bread thickened and wine sharp, with cinnamon and ginger to lift it. A spoon dips and you catch cinnamon in the steam. Green sauce tastes bright from parsley and sorrel, and the bite of verjuice made to cut fat. Cooks pair them on purpose, so the meat reads rich but not dull, and spice speaks of trade beyond the gate. A trained carver makes neat work at speed. He learned from manuals and from the sergeant of the pantry where to pierce and how to turn. He turns the head, lifts thin slices, and never lets a hand touch the meat. He pares boar skin so the crisp edge stays intact. He lays each cut on trenchers of bread that soak the juices, quiet and steady. Royal entries like this are rehearsed. Songs once praised the boar's head in Latin at Christmas. Trumpets and banners still frame key courses in some houses, which is less about noise than order. The ritual tells you who controls the wood, the hunt, and the kitchen. Even the path to the table has a pecking order. Penalties keep most mouths away from deer. Officials seize bows and dogs from those who hunt without leave. That limit narrows supply, which makes venison taste like status even before anyone eats. Household rolls then track spice by the pound. Pepper, saffron, and sugar travel far. Spending them in a sauce advertises wealth and a palate that knows fashion, not just hunger. Boar and venison are not the only signals. A pie raised high and stuffed with small birds, a peacock redressed in its feathers, or a swan sealed with a badge tells a story too. Yet the boar's head and the red deer are the cleanest proof of access. They show the right to strike in the forest and to bring the quarry home. Carving itself is a kind of oath. The office belongs to trusted hands, often a gentleman in training, and his skill flatters the lord. He carves facing the high table so the best angles are visible. A mistake would spoil more than meat. It would dent the dignity of the day. Sauces do their own quiet work. Cameline is common in French and English cookbooks for high tables and appears again and again in accounts. Green sauce shifts with the season, heavy on sorrel in spring, more parsley in winter. The color matters. It looks lively against pale venison and deep brown boar, which makes the meat seem fresher and the host more refined. The result is clear. Meats show rank, and sauces show taste, and the law shapes the menu behind the scenes. The glaze and the spice are on view with the lord. The pairing is policy on a platter. Heralds, carvers, and cooks keep the script in motion, course by careful course. Not every day lets meat take a bow. Fast days fill the calendar for nobles and townsfolk alike, on Fridays, in Lent, and on many vigils and vigils of feasts. Meat leaves the table by rule, and fish steps in with equal ceremony. Eel pies, pike and almond milk, and barrels of salted herring keep the servers busy. The next course quiets the room in a different way. Take a slow inhale through your nose. Let a longer exhale slip out. Let candlelight blur at the edge of your vision. The high table sat raised at one end. A large salt cellar stood near its center, set like a marker. Because the central salt marked rank, therefore, who sat above it and who sat below it mattered. Stewards placed guests by precedence, kin, and office. A seat near the top meant favor and trust. Kitchen fires burned hot. Cooks watched spits, kettles, and pastry lids. Boys turned irons, while scullions hauled water and wood. Clerks kept the rhythm with bells and steady calls. Teams moved in shifts so dishes reached the high table at the right moment. Bread did double duty. Thick trenchers served as plates, caught gravy, then made way for the next dish. When the meal ended, the used trenchers were passed down the chain to lower tables and to the poor at the gate. Almoners gathered them and other leftovers with quiet routine. Charity and order ran side by side. Roasts signaled rank. A roast was a banner on a platter. Fragrant sauces of pepper, vinegar, or verjuice cut the fat and showed the cook's hand. Roasts were tied to privilege through hunting laws, so only certain people could serve deer or rare birds. Spices and a hint of gold leaf said money in reach. The hall's echo fades. Notice cooler air near the doorway. Smoke thins, and the chatter drops to a low wash. Take another slow breath. Let your shoulders loosen. Curiosity can carry you gently to the next thing. Let's step into a quieter course shaped by the calendar. Barrels of herring and stiff cod, dried into stockfish, line the pantry like short towers. Eels wait in tubs, coiled and quiet. The air carries clean brine and cool wood. A cook sets a plank across a block and pounds the stockfish to soften it. You hear a mallet thud on dried fish. He soaks the flakes, then whisks ground almonds with warm water for milk, tipping it into a pottage until it turns pale and smooth. See pale almond milk cloud a pot, while a kettle hisses and throws light steam. The calendar sets the menu more than the host. Church fast days limit meat and dairy across much of the year, from every Friday to long Lents and the vigils before feasts. Because many days forbid meat and dairy, therefore fish, oils, and almond milk fill the gap. Like switching to a vegan menu half the week, by law. Herring comes salted by the barrel, ready for soaking and poaching. Cod arrives as stockfish, rock hard until beaten and steeped, then cooked with herbs or onions. Eels, rich and prized, can be baked in a pie or stewed with spices or verjuice. Sauces ride in to lift it all. Green sauce with herbs and vinegar. Cameline with cinnamon and wine. Mustard bright enough to clear a nose and wake a table. Meatless, not joyless. Almond milk does more than soften a soup. Cooks use it wherever butter or cream would go. They thicken it with rice flour into custards, or sweeten it for tarts and blancmange, and tint it with saffron for color. On strict days, they even give it shape and surprise. Mock eggs appear, shells emptied and refilled with almond milk yellowed with spice. Fish rise from pastry in cunning forms. sauces gloss the plates, peppery, sweet sour, or ginger warm. So each bite feels planned and bright. Supplies make this possible. Herring fleets feed cities far inland, and cod banks make stockfish a staple on northern tables. Rivers near big houses still give eels, easy to keep in ponds and weirs. Almonds and spices ride north with merchants, then sit in chests in a cool room until needed. Pressed oils from olives or poppy seed stand in for butter. The host shows order as well as generosity, keeping rules in sight while keeping guests busy with variety. Service keeps the mood festive. Bread trenchers are changed often, clean and warm. A platter of eel in green sauce follows a pottage, then a baked herring pie, then a clear fish broth to reset the mouth. A subtlety may roll by between courses, a sugar beast or a painted badge, to draw a smile and mark the theme. The rhythm turns the rule into theater. Tastes bend to the season too. In Lent, menus lean on roots and grains with fish on top, and cooks borrow brightness from vinegar or citrus where trade allows. In Advent, the pace is calmer, but still rich in spice. Almond milk keeps the color pale and the texture lush, and oil gives a clean fry or a glossy finish without breaking the fast. Strong pepper and ginger signal rank and care, and they balance the salt of fish that sailed far to get here. For guests, the effect is simple. Plates stay full, the table stays lively, and no one misses the fat too much. The rules turn into a puzzle that good kitchens can solve on the fly. Illusions and sauces keep spirits up on fast days, and the host's piety feels like hospitality rather than loss. Even the soundscape plays along. Kettles breathe, knives tap, the pantry whispers of sea and smoke. This is a feast within lines, and the lines make the pattern. Next, the pattern widens toward the centerpieces that do all the talking without a word. Soon, the trumpets return. Not for flavor, but for spectacle. A sugar castle slides down the hall on a broad wooden board, steady in the hands of two kitchen boys. It turns heads as candles catch its towers and banners of pulled paste. Watch gold leaf glitter against dark wood. Hear a quiet gasp ripple along the benches. Subtleties or subtleties are sugar or pastry sculptures, built to be seen first and tasted last. Warm air carries a soft honey sugar note as the thing is set before the high table. Entremets follow between the heavy courses, designed to entertain while knives rest. A gilded peacock arrives, redressed in its skin and feathers, bright as a painted shield. Jellies wobble in heraldic colors, tiny towers and animals trapped in the shine. A pie reaches the dais and opens to a surprise, perhaps small birds flitting out, and chuckles run along the forms. Some tables see mechanical swans that glide, or little pageants rolled on wheels, and the hall leans in. Cooks, carvers, and painters sink heavy hours into these sites to say something. The theme can be a new marriage, a victory, a saint's day, or a host's reach. Sugar must be boiled, beaten, and molded, paste dried, colors mixed, leaf laid, and each step takes skill. The cost is real in sugar, saffron, gold leaf, and labor, and it is spent to send a message, like a corporate keynote with edible slides. Because messages travel through spectacle, therefore dishes double as propaganda. Please don't eat the press release. Spice on the steam lifts from the platters as they pass, sharp and warm in the heat. Meaning outruns flavor in these moments. Many guests will not taste the peacock at all, but they will remember the sheen, the motto, and the order of service. The host shows hierarchy by who is served, when they are served, and what gets cut before their eyes. A subtlety can praise a patron, flatter a lord, or hint at a claim, and the room reads it as if it were ink. Here, meaning matters more than mouthfuls for these courses. Tiny pinches can speak loudly at a table like this. A dusting of pepper or a thread of saffron signals. Routes, money, and ties far beyond the hall. A small show of exotic flavor marks rank, and it foreshadows the power locked in spice jars. When you next catch that warm lift of pepper in the air, think of how a pinch can stand for a ship, a merchant, and a tax. Follow the trail of pepper and saffron to where they began. A spicer lifts a keyed lid on a small oak box. Black peppercorns bead in one corner. Dried ginger slices sit pale and fibrous, and a pinch of saffron threads glows like thin fire. Pepper throws a little tickle up your nose, and saffron breathes a hay-like aroma. See yellow threads stain a fingertip. A sugar loaf stands nearby like a small white tower. It lives behind warded cupboards, with iron hasps, and the keys ride on the steward's belt. Cinnamon sticks wait, rolled and neat, for wine or broth, and pinches get measured at the high table so everyone can witness the generosity. Hear a tiny click as a spice box latch shuts. Pepper, cinnamon, ginger, saffron, and those hard sugar loaves count as prestige goods. Spicers mind them like cash, and merchant networks guard their flow from port to port, city to city, with contracts and trusted couriers. Because imports travel far and cost dearly, therefore pinches impress more than piles, like flexing with a tiny luxury watch. Routes lace the map behind every grain. Indian Ocean ships lift pepper from the Malabar coast. Caravans carry cinnamon and ginger through ports in the Levant. Saffron grows closer in Spain or in small European plots, but the finest still moves across borders. Venice and Genoa sit in the middle, taking their cut and securing supply with letters and loans. A castle pantry looks steady, only while those relationships hold. Tricks worry the steward, and cost sets the rules. Less honest sellers pad pepper with berries or dye saffron with cheap petals, and sugar can be cut with chalky starch if no one checks. Spicers bite, smell, and test, then weigh out ounces with brass weights. Fraud risk and high price shape how the kitchen uses every expensive speck. Small, pricey, persuasive. Ceremony turns into economics right on the plate. The carver dusts pepper over roasted fish on a fast day so the right people get the right heat, and the scent drifts just far enough. A cook steeps ginger and cinnamon into a rich sauce for capon or pike, then lifts it with a quiet dot of saffron. The color signals reach and order as much as flavor, and a spoonful can paint a whole platter. Excellent question. Sugar here acts like a spice, not a daily sweet. It gets shaved from the loaf and sprinkled into hippocras, or pressed onto wafers, or stirred into almond milk for a custard at the top board. A sugar cone sits like a trophy because it implies ships, agents, and silver, paid on time. When you see wafers dusted with sugar and cinnamon for the last course, you're seeing credit and distance turned into a taste. The spicer's role stretches past that moment at the table. He keeps a ledger for every nutmeg, every ginger root, often buying through known merchants who vouch for quality and root. He knows which sack crossed from Alexandria, which bale came via Bruges, and who to avoid at the fair. These chains build reputations that can outlast a season of poor winds. Prestige changes hands in small motions. The server pinches saffron into broth, where it blooms yellow, then carries the tureen to the high table first. The household watches, and guests note the order of service, and that is part of the message. The steward wants the spices to be seen, so the networks behind them are quietly understood. The kitchen balances show and thrift. A costly sauce reaches only the front ranks, while the bulk of the hall eats good bread and a hearty pottage. The recipe choices are math in the margins of the feast budget. Pepper and sugar make bright highlights, so the whole evening reads richer than it costs. Even drinks carry the map. Mulled wine takes cinnamon and ginger, and a cup of hippocras turns a red jug into proof of trade. Spiced ale and sweetened almond milk do the same at lower strength. Trade routes appear in every sip and bite. That shine winds down with the ritual of ending. Cupbearers move with ewers, and scented water pours over open palms. Towels come next, and rings glint as hands are dried. Leftovers leave the hall with a plan, from the Lord's gifts to the poor at the gate to parcels for important retainers. The display of spice leads cleanly into the display of grace. The hall breathes out as the last course closes. Music lowers, the accounting waits for morning, and you can hear the cup chains clink as basins are set ready for washing. The music dips, and cups and basins appear. Take a deep inhale. Let it fill your ribs. Hold a beat, then let a longer exhale slip out. Let your shoulders drop. A low fan hum sits under the soft ember crackle, steady and small. Fast days ruled much of the calendar. Because fast days put meat off the table, therefore fish and plant-based courses filled the boards. You see salted herring, stockfish beaten soft, and eel in sauce. Almond milk stands in for dairy and pottage and custards. Cooks lean on peas, leeks, bread, and oil. The platters look full, yet rules sit under every bite. Inland houses leaned on river fish, while ports sent barrels of herring and cod inland. Kitchen clerks counted days, weighed loaves, and kept Lent honest. Subtleties rise between courses, quiet signals in sugar and paste. A castle of marchpane hints at a patron's rites. A saint shaped in almond paste marks a holy day. A badge painted with gold leaf praises a marriage or deal. The aim is not flavor. It is the message, sent by a sweet shape. Some subtleties carried verses on small banners to spell out the point. Spices and sugar showed wealth in plain view. Pepper, ginger, cinnamon, saffron, and grains of paradise came by ship and road. A few threads or grains changed a dish, and the room noticed. Sugar loaves were carved with knives, then melted into sauces or spun into tall sweets. Think of it like putting a luxury label on the main course. Saffron stained broths a gold glow that read as rank. A heavy hand would waste coin and dull the dish, so measures stayed small. The hall grows quieter. Cups settle on oak with soft taps. A lute line fades into the rafters. Candle stubs pool wax. Servants wait at the edges. Talk slides toward thanks and homeward news. Draw one more steady breath in. Let it out slower. Soften your brow. Unclench your jaw. Let your fingers rest on the cloth. Soon come the grace, the hand-washing with rose water, the alms measure, and the dividing of leftovers for guests, staff, and the poor. Servants took shares by rank, and almsmen waited at the gate. The feast has a plan for the day after, so nothing is wasted in spirit or in stores. Your curiosity can sit for a moment, easy and awake. Watch the stewards, the cupbearer, and the marshals set their last moves. Now, watch how it all winds down. A cupbearer steps to your elbow, and offers a warm cup of hippocras, while an ewerer brings a broad basin to the board. The spiced wine lifts with clove on the steam. You hear a wooden mazer cup set down with a soft clunk. An ewerer pours while you hold out your hands. Feel cool water stream from a ewer into a waiting basin, then over your fingers. A towel follows, quick and neat. A taster stands within reach, eyes on the cups, and the butler in the buttery keeps the casks, the keys, and the flow of drink steady for the hall. Ale, wine, and hippocras fill most cups. Because water can be unsafe and wine a status drink, therefore, ale and diluted wine anchor the table. Like choosing office coffee over tap water. The ale may be young and mild, the wine stretched with water, and the spiced stuff a treat near the end. A taster lifts your cup first, testing the sip, then nods. The cupbearer pours and offers, and you drink in turns with your table, sometimes sharing a mazer, rim wiped with a cloth between hands. The system sounds fussy, but it keeps order in a crowded room. Sip, don't slip. A butler sets the pace from the buttery, sending servants with pitchers as the board calls. The cupbearer carries rank with the cups, the taster guards trust, and the ewerer keeps hands clean before and after the meat. Small rolls add up to a smooth arc, like choir parts that hold a steady note under the song. An almoner waits by the screens as the dishes thin. He gathers trenchers, those thick bread plates soaked with sauce, and heaps of leftovers into baskets for the poor at the gate. The handoff is brisk and practiced. You catch a breath of bread and cold night air near the doorway. A final wash pulls the feast to a close. The last pour of hippocras warms throats, and the last platters drift away. The real end is not a messy heap, but a tidy ritual. The feast ends with ritual, hygiene, and charity, not waste. The last cup settles. The benches empty. The embers glow. Let the hall go quiet. Thank you for walking from the great hall to the warm hearth with me tonight. We passed long tables to the quiet edge of the kitchen, then home to your pillow. Torches dimmed, benches scraped back, and tired feet finally rested. The heat of the ovens faded to a low glow. Medieval feasts were theater run on rules and supply, heavy on bread, fish on fast days, spice for status, and leftovers with a purpose. Loosen your jaw and let your shoulders drop. Breathe in slow, then out, like coals settling after a busy fire. Let your tongue rest and your lids grow heavy. It's fine to drift off now, or stay for a minute and float on the quiet. If you enjoyed tonight's story, a like and a subscribe help this hall stay lit. If you're still awake, leave a quick note with where you are and what time it is when you're listening. I love seeing the map of night across the world. Plates are stacked in tidy towers. Knives are wiped clean. The salt cellar is closed, and the carving board cools. The last cup sets down with a soft tap. The low fan hum keeps steady, and the ember crackle tucks in close, like rain on a roof. Your pillow outranks any duke tonight, which feels right. Good night, friend. Let the ember crackle ease into silence as you fall asleep.